Okay, so what's up? We're back again with another video. Today I'm going to be doing the Lower Karazhan because it seemed like that was the one that people were the most ready for and the most anxious to see, so I decided that instead of doing Grimrill or doing Iron Docks today, oh snap, instead we do the Lower Karazhan and just kind of walk through what the most important parts of this dungeon are, walk through like what the things you should be looking out for and kind of how to handle it, so that way you kind of have a better grasp and better understanding whenever you reach these parts of the dungeon, because the dungeon not easy. I would suspect it's going to get maybe a little bit more of a nerf in the next coming days. It's already received a little bit of a nerf, so this is after like the nerf to the Maiden shield, but at the same point, like, this dungeon is still not exactly free. First thing, these patrons do a throw penny cast. It's on your tank. It does a large amount of damage. It is invisible though, so whenever your tank, I mean, you can just like watch our tank here. Whenever he gets this pack pulled, he starts dropping incredibly low because all the patrons immediately throw their pennies on him. And so just be cautious whenever you're grouping the pack. Beyond that, there's not a ton going on just in this area, to the point where I decide that I'm going to run ahead and actually start the RP for the boss. I think that this is actually really good to do whenever you're in coordinated groups. Ideally, you're going to have the healer do it. However, like I see that we're doing like this philanthropist, like infiltrator pull. I'm not needed for this pull, like, and I recognize that pretty fast, so I decided instead to just this is me coming back, but I decided instead to just like run ahead. I talk to the guy. It starts the RP for the boss. This allows us to save a little bit of time. That's something that's super nice that you can do. First boss, this opera boss. You get one of 3 potential encounters. On NA right now, we have West Side Story. On EU, they have Beauty and the Beast. So basically, Beauty and the Beast is historically the hardest one. It seems like it's gotten tuned a little bit to be kind of a bit more fair now, from what I understand. Obviously, I have not tried it, but for West Side Story, what you're doing here is you're focusing down Tony. If you have a dispel, like a poison removal, you want to be dispelling like vulnerable targets as fast as possible. You also want to kill the ruffians off. These are the people that put the poisons onto people, so the faster you get them killed off, then you just kind of start DPSing down Tony. After the ruffians die, this guy is kind of okay. He does like this, he like goes into this fire phase, and then he starts like dashing at people. It can be pretty dangerous, so if you have like a defensive, you can pop a defensive there, but it's mostly fine, is what I will say about that. After that, you DPS down the Murloc. It shoots like these the Murlocs that are attached to it. If the bubble blast goes off, then it's just like these circles, and there's like very slow moving. There's obviously waves that are coming across as well. Then after you get both of the bosses to 50%, they'll both activate at once. I would say overall, not even an intricate boss. There's not too much to write home about. Just there is a lot of ambient damage, so kind of be a bit cautious whenever you're doing that. Oh my gosh, my cat almost knocked something off my table. So just kind of be cautious about the amount of ambient damage that's happening, especially whenever Tony is dashing around the room. It should be fine though. So after the opera event, there's actually a decent amount of trash that you have to do. And so whenever you actually pull these mobs, the understudies, they do this light. Okay, so you see it on screen right here. So this light, whenever you're standing in it, it gives you a 50% increased damage dealt buff. In addition to that, if there are any mobs underneath it, they also do 50% increased damage. So ideally, you get the mobs out of the light, and you yourself stand inside of the light, and that way you're able to kill these mobs off relatively easily. You see me, I'm a bit slow to get in here, I will admit. I could have moved in a bit faster into the light to get my damage buff, but you want to definitely be maximizing your uptime inside of this light to be able to kill these trash mobs. So that's actually super nice. Here's Zul'Gurmuk. So Zul'Gurmuk is also in this area. We walk up, and actually Zul'Gurmuk is in the corner. I was trolling. I didn't realize that this was going to be Zul'Gurmuk, and so it's actually paired with this understudy. You could technically CC this understudy in the technically CC that understudy that's in the corner and pull Zul'Gurmuk solo, and then pull the understudy downstairs and like utilize the light to be able to DPS down the next little bit of trash. That's probably beneficial if you're doing this thing in like a super coordinated group. If you're just kind of pugging or doing like a lax route, it's not the end of the world. Like you don't need to be that serious about the whole entire endeavor. Okay, so this trash that's underneath the stage, this trash is very dangerous. So the singers, they do a Firelands portal cast, and so you see that we have two of them right here. So this one's casting Firelands portal, and this one's casting Firelands portal. I have an interrupt solar beam, probably the strongest interrupt in the game for these kind of mobs. It is inspiring, but like it's not really that big of a deal, just with how solar beam works, because we're not pulling the pack with the inspired mob. So I beam as late as possible. You can utilize things like leg sweep. You can use any AoE CC. We used to like chain solar beam into a bunch of arcane torrents, and it was mostly fine back in Legion. But now in today's day and age, it's very, very. You have to be super cautious about the Firelands portal going off. We unfortunately body pull the pack with the. So you see what Firelands portal does. It's just like this AoE damage, and it summons these terrible, terrible mobs from the great beyond. We actually end up recovering this pull, so it didn't end up mattering. It's really, really dangerous if it's not on a 16 tyrannical. And so doing it like that is pretty bad. So next up, we got the patrons that are on the stage. They're mostly free. I would say that grab the second usher as well. In addition to the... like you already have one infiltrator in this pull. Grabbing a second infiltrator in this pull, no diff. You're getting more stats. Front loading the amount of stat gain that you're getting in these dungeons from the Shrouded Affix is incredibly, incredibly important. And so just grabbing that infiltrator on top of all those patrons and mobs that are basically nothing is important. Okay, let's talk about the ushers. So I'm going to mess this up and die, but how this works is they cast a... so they have two abilities. One is Punch Ticket. It's just tank damage. It's pretty annoying. I think it's a high amount of tank damage and could be a problem at a high level, but as it currently stands, it's not the most dangerous thing. The other ability is the Flashlight, which I, Chief Moron, don't actually turn around on. So these mobs are casting Flashlight right here. You have to turn around, and you do not get disoriented. You do still take initial hits from the Flashlight, so it is actually very dangerous, but it's fine. I would say if you're going to pull 4 of these, you should do a strategy where you are just completely line of sighting these around a pillar permanently and just continuing to move them, just continue to move them clockwise around this pillar. And like once they stop casting their Flashlight, they'll eventually just like catch up with you. And so you're able to DPS them. Your range, you're going to have a bad time doing it like this, but this allows you to pull 4 of these, or potentially even 6, I would say probably 4 of these ushers at once, and be able to deal with them without taking any damage from the flashlights. So like even whenever you have your back turned, the Flashlight does a decent amount of damage. You see the group kind of drops to 20%. I'm kind of malding a little bit because I was being a moron and accidentally got CC'd. But it's fine. I'm acting like your everyday pug. Okay, so here I would say that like doing this trash in with this size pull is probably pretty acceptable. The arcane wardens do like the circle that are on players. Splitting this room up into 2 or 3 trash pulls is actually pretty nice, and so that it allows you to, like, the wardens are unavoidable damage, but like in all reality, there's not a lot that's going to be going on here. The waiters, I remember them having a pretty bad dot. I don't know how it scales with current Mythic Plus scaling, but they did have a pretty bad dot back in Legion. Overall, make sure that you're just taking this room a little bit smaller than you would expect. For some reason, you kind of look at this pack and you think that you could do the whole room in 1 pull, but separating it up into 3 pulls is definitely going to yield better results in the long run. Let's talk about Morose, which is, I think, the boss that I've gotten the most questions about basically ever. Let's see. So I hope I square up to the stage so I can circle mobs. Okay, we'll just pause here. So we have Druger, Robin Darris, Crispin Ferrets, and Frida, I think is what her name is. So this mob on the left, she is a caster. There are 2 different... So basically there are 6 mobs that could be on the stage. There's this mob, which is just like the Arcane Bolt mob. There's also a different caster which will cast a mana drain. These mobs only need to be kicked. These are kind of fine. Crispin Ference here, he is probably the pug killer and the mob that I would recommend doing solo. And what I mean by that, I'll explain in a second. And then Ramandaris and Druger, they can be done together and they kind of don't do anything. And in all reality, they don't even necessarily need to be killed. Like they seriously don't do much. I keeping them CC'd in the beginning and then just like doing one of these more dangerous mobs by itself is certainly preferred. So we have 2 traps right here off to the side. You see our DK tank picks up one. I'm going to pick up the other in just a second. In addition to that, we have a hunter, and so they can use hunter CC. I could potentially just hard cast a root on one of these mobs as well if we wanted to. So say we wanted to just like hard root Druger, trap Ferris, trap Darius and trap Ferris, and then like start on Dorothy. We could absolutely do that. Alternatively, we could. What I would recommend is like trapping Dorothy, like doing Ference solo first, which we're probably gonna end up doing, and then we just end up doing it like that. However, we have 3 traps because we do have access to the hunter, and so you see me. We're gonna run to the side. I'm gonna look at what the hunter is trapping, and then I'm going to make the executive decision. So our tank trapped Dorothy. Our hunter is going to trap the far right side and trap Druger. I'm going to walk up and get Darius. This is going to be fine. This allows us to get Crispin by itself because Crispin is by far the most dangerous mob here. He casts an Iron Will, I think is the name of the cast, which is basically, it's a large AoE, and whenever the mobs are pulled together, they gain an incredible amount of haste. So Crispin, whenever he's done solo, his cast on this ability is like, okay, so Willbreaker is 3 seconds. Whenever he's done with another mob, it's like 0.75. You see me right here, I'm actually playing for the group, and you can stop the Willbreaker with any displacement effect. So even if it's casting like a 0.75 speed, you can stop it with like DK grip or something like that, which is what people did back in Legion. They played it with another mob. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to be watching Ferris, and once the moment he starts casting Willbreaker, I don't really want this to go off on our group, so I'm immediately just going to knock him. We're going to be focusing him down, and the moment that he dies, you see I'm going to target Dorothy on the stage, and then I'm immediately going to be looking to kick her because she's going to be casting an Arcane Bolt. And so this is going to allow her to get off of the stage. We do use a DK grip to get her down as well, which is nice, but you want to be breaking that mob and then just kicking it to make sure that it's going to move all the way down. From here, you're just going to be rotating kicks through. It's mostly okay, and from here on out, we only have Darius and Druger. So these, like, one of them does an Iron Whirlwind and the other one throws axes. So the Iron Whirlwind, you just don't want to be within, I think, 20 yards of Druger. He is so fake. You actually just take Morose far from him, and it's pretty chill. And then Darius, like, I at some points in Legion, you would even have both of these mobs just left alive permanently and just deal with them that way. Let's talk about the Garrote. And I've seen a lot of discussion about the Garrote. I just want to explain really quickly how the Garrote works. You see it on our healer here. So basically how this Garrote works is it prioritizes non-Garroted targets starting with the healer. And so if you have access to things like Paladin, Dwarf Racial, stuff like that, very, very powerful because you can, Kyrian File, you can remove the bleeds. And so say you have like a Dwarf Paladin Kyrian healer, they can go Bop first, they can go Bubble second, they can go they go Bop first, they can go Dwarf second, they can go Bubble third, they can go Kyrian File fourth, and then the Dwarf Racial may be back up at that point. And so like you can actually go through a lot of CC and removal of the Garrotes. However, if not, you can do things like pre-immuning it, you can do things like of that kind of sort, and that allows you to reduce the amount of damage that's just going to be going out on the party with the Garrote. And you see it's actually ticking me pretty hard here. We're mostly fine because we kind of had lust. I even started healing whenever our healer went down. Our healer's trying to play catch up, and now the third thing goes on the tank. It's pretty fine. Like if your healer is paying attention, they have a lot of CDs. If they have like ascendants and whatnot, they should be able to just keep the group topped up. We were able to down Morose, no real problems. It's mostly fine here. Okay, so next up we go into the Attumen area. Right now, you see we're standing in the kitchen. The only thing to actually note that's in the kitchen, there are these additional traps. If you want more traps for Morose, you can come and start clearing out some of the trash and get the traps here, and then you take them into the Morose area, which is like over to the left here, and then you can have 3 traps at once if you don't have, say, a hunter. And that's actually something that's super nice and super useful whenever you are dealing with the boss if you don't have a hunter. Or you don't want to like hard cast root over and over again. The trash in the kitchen, I'm not convinced that it's like super efficient. It used to not be back in Legion. It's something that I like. That's going to come with time. I think this is just like a routing thing. But the only thing to really point out there is that the traps, the additional traps, reside in that kitchen area. I don't think I necessarily need to talk about the trash in the Attumen wing. The only thing that you need to know about the trash here is whenever you pull Attumen, all of the trash surrounding the boss will also get pulled. And so like there's this trash pull that most people don't do. Like whenever you come in, it's on the right. It's like on the far right. And so you really want to make sure that you grab that before you pull the boss, because I've seen a bunch of groups, they end up pulling the boss, but they've forgotten to grab the trash, and they're like, ah, snap. And then they have to reset the boss, and they have to actually do the trash after the fact. So make sure that you get that trash pull. That's the only real thing to note about this trash. There are like skeletal charges, and the horses need to be kicked, but I would say that the pack is pretty reasonable, assuming that you're doing appropriate pull sizing in this area. Okay. I'm going to fast forward a bunch because we wiped through this boss like 3 or 4 times. And I just kind of want to show what it looks like whenever it's done successfully, because I think it's a little bit easier than just like talking through every single mistake that we made on this boss. I think that overall, the reason that we were wiping through it's not necessarily because it's overtuned, but it's like people are like brand new, and there were a lot of individual mechanical mistakes that presented themselves on this fight. What is my cat doing? Okay, this is the pull where we kill the boss. So right off the rip here, you see me standing pretty far away from Midnight. This is due, like, if you're ranged and I think you stand over 40 yards away from the boss, you can actually avoid the damage from his trample silence ability. It also allows you to avoid the lockout as well. I actually stand within range of the Mighty Stomp because I'm a noob, but this is just something that you absolutely can do. So after you DPS down Midnight below 50%, Attumen will dismount the horse. At that point, Attumen becomes vulnerable, and he is the HP pool that you are the most focused on by far. And what you're looking to do here is you're looking to get his HP to 0 so he is not remounting the horse. You're probably not going to one-phase it. You're probably going to have to be looking to two-phase it. And so you want to save all of your offensive CDs for whenever he does dismount this horse, and this allows you to save yourself potentially even 1 or 2 phases depending on what your CDs are looking like here. Overall, there's a shared suffering mechanic, which you're going to see in just a second come up. I said that I'm actually able to solo, or not solo, but like duo soak this with the tank on a 16 Tyrannical. On higher levels, you're going to have to immune soak it probably, or you're going to have to dodge it. I'm just going to pause for a second, because I feel like I'm not going to be able to explain this without pausing here. So how this works is like it's actually it's a ground targeted effect, but it's on the tank. And if the tank is able to run away fast enough, so it's actually really difficult for DK tanks to do this. But if the tank, say, has like a roll or like a transcendence, or they have Wraith Walk available if they're a DK tank, or if they have like a lot of movement speed, say if they got Tiger's Lusted, or if they got gripped by a priest, they're able to actually dodge the shared suffering. And so there's going to be a lot of VODs of other tanks and other groups like dodging the damage from the shared suffering. And if you are the tank player of the group, I would recommend looking into these things, because they're not actually that hard to do, but you need to have some level of knowledge beforehand. If not, just kind of grouping up and like understanding what soaks you're going to be getting is important. I think that right here, Bear plus Bark is totally fine. Ideally, your tank doesn't need like all 5 people to group soak them. And honestly, all 5 people group soaking the shared suffering is very, very dangerous because of how much damage it's going to be doing to your whole entire party. Instead, the tank just needs one additional person to do it. So if they're not able to realistically run away from the mobs, a very common strategy is to like burn like an immunity plus the tank inside of the shared suffering, and that like that split of the damage plus like a tank cooldown such as rune tap or such as vamp blood should be plenty for them to be able to just not die to the shared suffering, even if they have the mortal strike on them. So I hope that makes a lot of sense. Beyond that, the boss is going to remount midnight. Then we're going to start getting these horses that are crossing the room. I like to play inside of the boss area here because it's like really, really scary if you're playing at max range, because the boss is moving around some. And so the boss can actually push you off the wall, or the horses can spawn right on top of you. And so you really, I like to play near enough to the boss to where the horse isn't going to immediately spawn on top of me and kill me. Next, we get another dismount phase, and this is the point where we are trying to pump as much damage into this boss as possible to get him to die before he remounts the horse. If we get a third phase, we are in some deep trouble. So we're about to get a shared suffering here, by the way, and what we said in our group chat, in our party chat, was second one is Hunter Turtle. You can see that indicated here, and that's paired with, he should probably be like rune tapping or something like that. He IBFs plus we rally cry even. And so that's actually a large amount of cooldowns going into that. Our tank's HP doesn't really move. It's mostly okay. And like we were saying, that's how you kind of deal with the shared suffering if you aren't able to run away from it. Obviously, first priority is run away from it because you are able to mitigate the damage all the way from like having to commit immunity to all the way down to 0. From then here on out, Midnight's enraged, but Midnight is also taking increased damage. The dangerous part is like this mighty stomp. You see everybody drop so low, even on a 16 Tyran. Again, 30 yards, you can outrange it. I was, again, being a fool, and I forgot that was even part of the mechanic. Last thing I want to talk about is Maiden. I think the trash here is largely irrelevant. I would say that I like this route that we did, and I think that skipping this Maiden hallway of trash, it's normally seen as pretty inefficient, so I really like to skip this Maiden hallway. Route at your own discretion. You don't need to tell. I don't need to be telling you how to route, especially if you're watching this like way after the fact. It doesn't really matter too much. Okay. So first off, look at this. I've seen a lot of people talking about Maiden being overtuned. They did nerf the shield. Again, how you're looking to do this is you want to lust shield 1 with like 1 offensive cooldown, ideally, and then you use 2+ offensive cooldowns on shield 2, assuming you're going to get 2. I had not been in here this week, and I didn't realize how much DPS we were going to have. We ended up only getting... We got 2 shields, but we should have only gotten 1. I was being a fool with my CD usage because I didn't realize that we were only going to get one of these shields, and so I was playing a little bit more safe than sorry. But it just kind of depends on group to group. What I would say is you either need 2 offensive CDs or you need lust plus 1 offensive cooldown, and that's kind of like the general rule of thumb of how much you should be allocating to each shield phase. So what do I do here? Oh, I'm looking at this. Oh shit, might be. I didn't mean to hit the fast forward button. I'm looking at this Mass Repentance cast. It's in the bottom right. It also gets hidden whenever it goes to the left side of the screen. So I'm looking at this Mass Repentance cast in the bottom right. I know that whenever I touch the Sacred Ground, the buff lasts 15 seconds, or the debuff lasts 15 seconds on me. And so whenever I see the Mass Repentance get down to like 13 seconds, I know that I can hop in this Sacred Ground and take the dot. And so what I'm doing here, this is called staggering. And whenever you're debuff staggering, this allows this healer here is going to be focusing on only healing me, while the rest of the group doesn't have any of these Sacred Ground dots on them. And what this is going to do is, like, while I'm getting riptided and focused healing right here, everybody else is now going to hop in the Sacred Ground. And the moment that we come out of the Mass Repentance, I'm going to require 0 healing, as opposed to requiring basically full group healing. And with doing something like that, it allows your healer to just better prioritize, like, being able to do damage, not having to prioritize and full heal all 5 group members with Sacred Ground at once. Because if we all 5 had Sacred Ground, it would be an issue. And so just staggering that based on the Mass Repentance timer is super nice. I mess up, and I think that like my CD is going to be needed for the next shield. I should have just like dumped everything really early, we end up killing the boss off. Everything is fine, but that's generally the rule of thumb for Maiden. Just make sure you're staying spread for the Chain Lightning, make sure you drop the Sacred Grounds across the room, and you stagger whenever you're taking the Sacred Ground dot for Mass Repentance. Those things are what you should be looking at, and then beyond that, it's just cooldown allocation. Okay. I hope that helped. This was like 25 minutes. I don't think that I want to hold you guys too much longer. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like, comment, subscribe. Check out my Twitch stream. I've been streaming a lot lately, doing alpha content as well. In addition to that, just doing live keys, pugging, kind of hanging out. So come check me out on Twitch. And then I will see you guys later. Adios.